Today we will be in Chapter 4, Section 2, Graphing Linear Equations. Our three topic objectives for today will be to graph linear equations by plotting points, to graph linear equations using the x and y intercepts, and to graph horizontal and vertical lines. Chapter 4, Section 2, Graphing Linear Equations. The first way we're going to learn to graph linear equations is by plotting points. So step 1, you will solve the equation for y, aka get y by itself. Step 2, you'll pick a value for your x, then you will substitute it into the equation and record the value that you get for y. Step 3, you're going to repeat step 2 for 2 more values of x. You're going to plot all those points that you get, and then you're going to connect the points. I would like to say that on the course compass site, you will only be plotting 2 points per line, but it's always beneficial to actually find 3 points. It's a good way to check to make sure that you didn't mess up on any of your math. So that's why it says to do 3 here. But I just wanted to make sure you knew that for the course compass site, you will only need to have 2 points. Trying to give you a moment to write these down. Okay. I went ahead and drew out my coordinate plane, and then we're going to do an example so you understand what I mean by these directions. And there's our example, y equals 3x plus 6. So step 1 says we need to solve the equation for y, and that's already done. Step 2 says we need to pick a value for x and then substitute it in for our equation. So when I say that, I really mean you can pick whatever value of x you'd like. I'm going to do -2. And a lot of times I recommend doing like a negative, a positive, and then 0, because that's a good way to do it. So we have y equals, and then wherever there's an x, we're going to substitute in that -2. So this is going to be a -6 plus a +6, so that's going to give us 0. So our y in that case was 0, so that means that point is -2, 0. Okay, let's do x equals 0. So we get y equals 3 times 0 plus 6, and that equals 6, because this 3 times 0 is going to go to 0, and then you're just left with a 6. So when x is 0, y is 6. Do one more. When x, oh sorry, let's do it positive. Positive number is 1. So y equals 3 times 1 plus 6. So that'll just be 3 plus 6, which will give us 9. So when x is 1, y is 9. Now we have 3 points. Let's plot those and see if we can get a line out of that. So we have -2, 0, so it means we're not going to go up at all. Then we have 0, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then our last point was 1, 9. So we go to the right 1, and then we go up 9. Again, on the course compass site, you will only need 2 points. So there you go. We graphed that line. We can do one more. I'm going to graph it on the same graph just because it saves some paper in my case. So let's do a 3y equals 5x minus 6. So we need to get y by itself. Right now there's still that 3 over there, so we need to divide everything by 3. So y equals 5 over 3x minus 2. All I did was I divided everything by 3 in that case. So that was step 1, and then now we have to take out our x values. And here's a hint. If you have a fraction, then your x value, like if it's multiplying, just make your x values like 3 and -3 and 0. That way you don't have to deal with fractions. It'll make it a lot nicer. So in this case, we'll have x equal -3. So it'll be y equals 5 over 3 times -3 minus 2. Because when you take 5 over 3 times the -3, that'll make the 3's go away, and you'll just be left with a -1 up there. So then it'll be -5 minus 2, which equals -7. So it'll be -3, -7. And that way we didn't get any fractions. So whatever the bottom number is, if you're trying to figure out and plot by points, I would just make your x that value and make it positive and negative and then 0. So x equals 0. We have y equal 5 over 3 times 0 minus 2. So this is all going to go to 0, so that'll just leave it to be minus 2. And then if x equals a positive 3, we'll have y equal 5 over 3 times 3 minus 2. So the 3's will go away, which will just be 5 minus 2, which will be 3. So it'll be 3, 3. If you need a refresher on, your fractions, you have to go back to chapter 1 and just do some more practice that way. Hopefully by now, though, you've had a lot of practice with the fractions and you're okay with that. So now we're just going to plot those points. And again, I told you I'm just going to use the same graph that we've already plotted on. It saves me the headache of drawing it out again. Alright, we have -3. So we have to go to the left 3. 1, 2, 3. And then down 7. So we'll put it about right there. Our next point was 0, -2. Which is right there, or excuse me, 0, -2, which is right here. And then we have 3, 3. It's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And mine's off a little bit because it's a hand-drawn one. Make that dot a little bigger. There you go. So that's what you're going to do if you're going to graph your lines by plotting points. Alright, the next way you can do it is if you graph your equations of the form ax plus by equals 0. So the first thing you need to note is if you're doing this type of graphing, you're going to use the same steps that we were just using, the same steps as by graphing with points. So I didn't rewrite those steps down because you just wrote them and I thought that'd be a little redundant. But we will do an example so you see why that is. Right here, this is the ax plus by equals 0. So if we're following the same steps as by plotting points, we need to get our y by itself. So I'm going to subtract 2x from each side. And then I'm going to divide both sides by 5. So y equals -2 over 5x. Alright, so this is a fraction, and our bottom number is 5. So what values of x am I going to have that make nice numbers? I'll do -5, 0, and 5. So x equals 5. Then y will be -2 over 5 times 5. My 5's will go away, which will just leave me with a -2. So that's 5, -2 is my ordered pair. If x equals 0, then y equals negative 2 times 5 times 0, which equals 0. If x equals a negative 5, y equals negative 2 over 5 times a negative 5. My 5's will go away, and then my negative times my negative will make that a positive 2. So that's negative 5, positive 2. So now I have my 3 points, and I can make my graph to plot them on. If you're using graph paper, it'll actually look nice for you. So we have 5, negative 2, so we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then down 2. 0, 0 is right there in the middle, that's the origin. And then negative 5 and a positive 2 go to the left 2, or excuse me, left 5 and then up 2. And then we just connect our points. So if you're graphing by plotting points, or if you're graphing equations that are of the form ax plus by, you're going to be using the exact same steps. Okay, that's a little tedious. You can use this method, but you're really going to use the next method and the one after that a little bit more commonly. So the next method is graphing using the x and y intercepts. But in order to graph using the x and y intercepts, you need to understand what the x and y intercepts are. So the x-intercept is where a graph crosses the x-axis, and that's going to look like some x value, comma 0. So that means you're going to lie on the x-axis and you're not going to be up or down any. The y-intercept is where a graph crosses the y-axis, and it's going to look like 0, comma y. Okay, so we're going to graph our equations based on this information. So here are the steps for that. And I'll leave that stuff up there so you can copy it down. Steps for graphing using the intercepts. Step 1, you're going to find the y-intercept, and you're going to do that by letting x equal 0 for the equation. Then you're going to find the x-intercept by letting y equal 0 for the equation. The third step is going to be to plot those two intercepts. The fourth step is to connect them. So this one's a little bit easier because you're going to be using 0, so your numbers should be a little bit nicer and you don't have to worry about them as much as whenever you're just kind of guessing and picking numbers at random. So we're going to do an example, and the example is 3y equals 6x plus 12. If we were doing this by plotting points, we'd have to get the y by itself, but because we are just using the x and y intercept, we don't have to get the y by itself to initially do this. Okay, so step 1 says find the y-intercept, and to do that we have to let x equal 0. So that means everywhere in our equation that there's an x, we're going to plug in 0. So that would be 3y equals 6 times 0 plus 12. So that means 3y equals 12. And then we're going to divide both sides by 3. So y equals 4. So that means we have this point 0, 4. Step 2 says we're going to find the x-intercept by letting y equal 0. So that means anywhere in the equation that there's a y, we need to put in 0. So it'll be 3 times 0 equals 6x plus 12. So 0 equals 6x plus 12. We got to get the x by itself, so I'm going to subtract over my 12. And then you have to divide both sides by 6. Now here's something to be aware of. This is negative 2 equals x. So when we go to write this, make sure that negative 2 goes first, because our ordered pairs go x, y. That is an easy mistake to make and a common one, so just be aware of that. And if you get confused on which one goes first, either the x or the y, it's alphabetical. So x comes first in the alphabet, so x comes first in your ordered pair. Hopefully that'll help that. Okay, now we have our y-intercept, we have our x-intercept, so we can plot both of these, and then we'll have our line. So I'll make a little graph. Okay, our y-intercept was 0, 4, so it just means we need to go up 4 and plot a point. Our x-intercept was negative 2, 0, so we just plot a point. Then we connect those two, and that is the equation, or the graph of our line. Okay, and I know there's not a lot of room down here. I'm not going to graph this next one, but I just want to make sure and work another example with you. So, let's do another example. We have y equals 20, x plus 60. And I'm not graphing this one because it's got big numbers. So, step 1 is we need to plug in 0 for our x value. So that means we'd have y equals 20 times 0 plus 60. So y equals 60. So that means that point would be 0, 60. Step 2, we plug in 0 for our y value. So we'd have 0 equals 20x plus 60. Subtract our 60 over. And divide by our 20, and that'll leave us with a negative 3 equals x. So our other ordered pair would be negative 3, 0. So if you were to plot the points 0, 60 and the point negative 3, 0, and connect those two, you would have the equation of the line, or excuse me, the graph of the line y equals 2x, or 20x plus 60. Again, I don't want you to graph this one because you'd have to go up 70 or 60, and that's a lot of little tick marks. But I just wanted to work through another one so you can see the process worked out. Now there are a couple of special cases when it comes to graphing, and those would be graphing horizontal and vertical lines. And these can sometimes slip people up. And I do want you to star or highlight or circle this part of your notes, because I can tell you, guaranteed, there will be a horizontal and or a vertical line graph on your final exam. So you really need to make sure that you know how to do this. Okay, the graph of an equation of the form y equals b is in a horizontal line with the y-intercept at 0, b. I will work out a few of these examples so that you see what I'm talking about with this. Actually, I think I have an example coming up right there. We have example y equals negative 3. So what does that look like? It looks like this. This line right here is y equals 3. That's a horizontal line. And no matter what your x value is, your y equals negative 3. because notice there's no x in here, there's no x in that equation that'll change the y value, so it's just y equals -3. You can have 0 or x equal to 0, x equal to 1, x equal to 1,000,000, and it's still going to be y equals -3. So that means right here would be our y-intercept, and that would be at 0, -3, which is what this says. It says the graph of the equation of the form y equals b is a horizontal line with a y-intercept of 0, b. Our b was -3, and that's what that says right there. So that is horizontal lines. So it's going to be very similar for vertical lines. Sorry, I'm trying to keep that straight for you. It says the graph of an equation of the form x equals a is a vertical line with x-intercept at a, 0. That's kind of sloppy. Let me rewrite that. A, 0. Okay, so this one's really similar. This one, you have x equals 2, so it means you go over 2 and you draw a vertical line there, because no matter what your y value is, notice there isn't a y listed, but no matter what it is, it can be 100, -1,000,000, it's still going to be x equals 2. And so our x-intercept in this case would be right here, which would be 2, 0, because it's going to hit the x-axis at 2. These aren't meant to be hard. These are just two special cases of graphing lines. And so hopefully you see how that works. But please note, these always show up on your final exam, so it's very important that you understand how to graph these. And they will come up in the next section too when we're doing inequalities. So now it's time to move on and do some homework. Okay, this is your homework for 4.2. This is number 1. I am not going to work number 1. This is exactly like the end of the homework for 4.1. So hopefully you can do that one. I have not looked ahead to see what these assignments are. Number 2 is straight off of 4.1. Okay, number 3. I will do this because you need to learn how to use the graphing tool in Course Compass. So the first thing we're going to do, it says graph by plotting points, and then it gives you the equation. So over here on our paper, I'm going to work out what our points are, and then we're going to graph them. And then remember, on the Course Compass site, you only need to have 2 points, so that's all I'm going to do. And it does not matter which 2 points. So the easiest 2 points for you to use is your x and y intercepts. And I'll write that over here. Easiest 2 points. And the reason for that is because then you're plugging in 0 for one of your values each time, which just makes the math usually a little bit easier. But I will warn you, sometimes they aren't set up to take fractions, and so it just depends on what's easiest for you. But in this case, I'm going to plug in 0 for each, and then I'm going to try and graph for those two things. So I'm going to say 0 is my y, and then I'm going to solve for my x. So I have to add my 2 over, divide by 3, so I get 2/3 equals x. This is one of those cases where this might not work the best, but we will see. So I get 2/3 over 0 equals my first point. So now I'm going to let 0 equal my x value. So I get y equals 3 times 0 minus 2. So y equals a -2. That would be 0, -2. And I'm going to go ahead and find out, like, if x equaled 1, just in case I can't plot my 2/3. So y equals 3 times 1 minus 2. Y equals 3 minus 2. Y equals 1. So if x is 1, then my y is 1. And that's a nicer point. So I'm actually just going to graph these two. Okay, so we got 0, -2. Now you can graph right here, but I'm going to make this bigger so that we can see it a little bit better. So we need to graph a line. So if you're looking over here on your tools, there's one that looks like a line and it says line tool if you let your mouse linger on it. So you're going to click that one. Then it says click the graph to plot the first point on your line. So the first point we got was 0, -2. So I go down to -2 and plot that point. The next point was 1, 1. So I need to go over 1 and up 1. Notice the blue line it's showing us what our line will be. And if you look up here in the right hand corner of this box, it tells you what point you're sitting on where it says 1, 1. So that way you know you're on the right spot. And then you click it again. Now your line is yellow, your points are blue. Click save, and let's check our answer. And we got it right. Sometimes it can take a little practice learning how to graph with the Course Compass system, but if you need more practice, just keep hitting the similar exercise button. Okay, this one's again graph by plotting points. Plotting points. This one just says graph the linear equation, so you can use whatever method you'd like. Plotting points. Okay, this one, number 8, specifically says graph using the x and y intercepts. If you try and graph using anything besides the x and y intercepts, it will count it wrong even if it's the same line, because it wants to see that you know the x and y intercepts. So let's go ahead and work that, and I will show you how to do it. Okay, so our equation is y equals 7x plus 7. So to find the y-intercept, I have to let my x equal 0. So that would be y equals 7 times 0 plus 7. So y equals 7. So my point would then be 0, 7. To get my x-intercept, I have to let my y equal 0. So that would be 0 equals 7x plus 7. Subtract over my 7. Divide both sides by 7. And I get x equals -1. So my point then would be -1, 0. So that should be my x and my y intercepts. So those are the two numbers I need to plot. So we go back to our homework, and I'm going to click to enlarge the graph so it makes it bigger for you. Again, we need to click on our line tool, and our first one was 0, 7, so that means I go up 7. My second one was -1, 0. And hopefully that is our line. We got it right. Number 9 says use the intercepts. Number 10. Okay, number 10 is either a vertical or a horizontal line. This says x equals -8. So let's go get our line tool. So x equals -8. Let's just go over to x equals -8, and let's put a point right there. Now, where do I put my second point in this case? It does not matter. I can put it all the way up here on -8, 8.5, or I can put it all the way down here on -8, -7.5. It does not matter, as long as I have that vertical line, because x equals -8 means no matter what my y value is, it's going to be x equal -8. So this is our vertical line. So we're going to save it, and we're going to check it. And that's correct. Which means number 11 is going to be our horizontal line. I think you all can figure out how to do that one. So good luck on your homework and good luck on your quizzes.